How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, giving you guys your January 2019 horoscope for Pisces. Okay, Pisces. Well, this month is definitely going to be a little bit, I shouldn't say a little bit, it's going to be probably a lot bit better than the last couple months were. I mean, Mars is now out of your first house. He's going to be going into Aries, into your second house. Venus and Jupiter are making some love magic going on in your 10th house. And all of this Saturn stuff is happening in your 11th, which is probably good for the most part. So I do think that this month is definitely going to be a lot more positive than the past couple months have been. So I really do think that it's going to kick off 2019 pretty good, but there are a lot of serious things that are happening. So let's get into it. Starting off on January 1st, we have Mars ingressing into Aries, into his home sign, where Mars can do Mars things at the best that Mars can do them. He's out of your first house where it was really changing, your personality, your sense of self. Could have had some, issues with, frustration and anger and whatnot. But as Mars goes into your second house where, he's in his power, he can do Mars things, which is all about, attacking things, conquering, wanting to go about things. Your energy, your drive, your ambition has a lot to do with cutting and severing. So Mars can also deal with a lot of issues, especially with angers and frustrations. And this is going into your second house. So Mars going into second house is going to make you feel like, maybe you're spending a lot of money, or maybe you're making your money work for you really, really well. This is going to be a big time to really look at your assets and your valuables and see what exactly you are doing with them. And we're going to talk a lot more about that because Venus and Jupiter are going to be trining Mars, and they're going to be putting some good energy there too. However, I really do think Mars being in your second house for this whole month is a lot of the focus is going to be on what you have, meaning your assets, your money, your possessions, your valuables, and how you're really utilizing them, and what is going, what is being spent, and what is being brought in, what is being made out of something. Also on January 1st, we have the Sun conjoining Saturn. And this is kind of resetting that synodic cycle with Saturn as he kind of go around, or as the Sun goes around the zodiac and, makes its aspects to Saturn. This is resetting that Saturn energy. So this is bringing in new challenges and bringing in new things to conquer, new things to establish, new things to concentrate and discipline yourself on, new limitations, new problems. And so as the Sun hits Saturn, you may feel yourself being constrained, and this is happening in your 11th house of, oh my God, hold on. Don't you hate it when you try to sneeze and the sneeze just goes away? Because that's just what happened to me right now, so... Anyway, as the Sun hits Saturn, and this is happening in your 11th house, the 11th house is all about your friendships and your networks and the groups of people that you associate yourself with, or maybe your midheaven's right here, so this does have to do with some career stuff. However, as the Sun hits Saturn, this is kind of bringing in new responsibilities and new commitments in the area of friends, in the area of networks, in the area of, your community as well. So the 11th house is going to make you feel, bring in a lot more responsibility, as well as a lot more limitations and issues that are going to require you to discipline yourself on addressing them in the field of friendships and communities and networks and bigger groups of people. So that is going to be a really big deal, and we'll talk way more about that as we go through the month. But moving forward, on January 5th, we have the new moon in the solar eclipse in Capricorn. And so this is that new moon is really resetting all the intentions there. As the Sun and Saturn hit a couple days before in your 11th house, this is bringing in the new challenges. This is bringing in the new commitments. This is addressing these things. This is showing you where the limitations are, where the problems are. And the new moon is a couple days away. It kind of gives you enough time to look at everything, take it all in. And then as we have this new moon in Capricorn, which is also eclipsed, it's very partial. I don't even like to really count it because it's not, even though it's in the same sign, it's still not really next to the nodes. This is going to be the time of resetting those intentions and really putting the focus on, okay, what commitments, what responsibilities, what limitations, where you need to concentrate your energy, where you need to discipline yourself, where you need to put more structure and framework around things regarding your community, regarding your friends, regarding your networks of people. Like, what are you trying to establish? What are you trying to create? What more responsibility are you looking to take on? And so this new moon is really just focusing everything right there, and especially because Mercury will ingress into Capricorn on the same day. So Mercury's wanting to communicate things, he's wanting to get the message clear, get things efficient, get things effective, handle things in a professional manner. And as Mercury goes into your 11th house, where this is going to be like, this is a good time to network, this is a good time to reach out, this is a good time to connect yourself to other people, connect yourself to bigger groups of people, and really see what can really come out of it. But I just think the new moon and Mercury going to there is just going to have your whole mindset based on who your friends are, who you're associating with, what restrictions are coming out, where do you need to find either better friends, or where do you need to make more connections, be more grounded in your your community or your groups of people, your networks, things like that. We'll be talking a lot more about this because that's basically the main theme of January. Moving forward, a couple days later, Venus will enter Sagittarius, where Venus, she retrograded in your 9th house, went back to your 8th house, went through your 9th house again. It was a big time for you to really do a lot of spiritual evaluation and what do you value? What do you believe? What no longer serves you anymore? And as Venus goes into Sagittarius, where Venus is bringing value, bringing connection, and bringing beauty and all of these nice, glorious things into the area that is, Sagittarius, that's, exploring, that's, adventuring, that's learning and understanding and educating, that's doing something new, going out of your way, that's something exciting, something adventurous. And this is happening in your 10th house of your career, of, your public reputation, like how people see you. And as Venus goes into your 10th house in Sagittarius, I think this is going to be a really good time where your sense of, public opinion, or your sense of your career, maybe this has to do with your boss, a lot of good things are going to be happening. And I think it's about time to really start valuing where exactly you want to take your career, where exactly you want to take that vision, and what possibilities are there. And it's just about really valuing the opportunity that's in front of you. Moving forward, though, well, also on January 7th, Uranus goes direct in Aries, where Mars is. And so, as Uranus is in your 2nd house of money and your resources and stuff like that, it's kind of like, hey, you may all of a sudden get something, out of I feel like Uranus going direct in your 2nd house is kind of weird. I feel like maybe you'll get like a random object from somebody or something, or go and buy a random thing, or something kind of happens in that area. It's not really the biggest deal. However, I just wanted to make the note that Uranus goes direct on January 7th. Moving forward, though, January 11th, we have Mercury conjoining Saturn, where Mercury is spreading the message of Saturn, where he's communicating that. And Saturn in Capricorn in your 11th house is like, you're probably going to be dealing with some responsibilities and things, when it comes to friends, when it comes to networks and groups of people, what isn't working anymore? What isn't, creating the results that you're wanting to see? Where do you need to be more effective? Where do you need to be more efficient? Where do you need to discipline yourself in your communication with these people regarding addressing certain situations and issues? Mercury hitting Saturn is really just emphasizing that Saturn in your 11th house. It may make you feel like you're restricted, or maybe you don't have as many friends, or maybe you're not being connected as much as you want to. But Mercury hitting Saturn as well is also really focusing and concentrating your energy on what's gonna get you by, what is gonna work, what is just gonna get you to the next level, and what's also going to build a more solid foundation for you. What's gonna help you build and grow farther. So it's kind of like doing the hard work now so it pays off later. So that's going to be a really big deal. Moving forward, a couple days later, we have the Sun conjoining the South Node. And I waited to talk about the South Node eclipse stuff till this because as you have this Capricorn, Saturn stuff, these 11th house problems coming up, the Sun hitting the South Node, I really think is going to be a big time to reflect on with these issues, with these commitments, with these responsibilities that you have, looking back at your past and seeing how you've handled these situations before, and taking what you've learned in these past experiences and addressing your situation now with that knowledge. So I do really think that the Sun hitting the South Node is just going to be a big time to realize maybe it's going to be time to look back in your past and really go, okay, how did I do this before? How did this work before? Where have I experienced this before? And this is just really looking for that experience to give you a better understanding of where you're at and how you can address these problems. And we're going to talk a little bit more of that too, because the Mercury is going to hit the South Node, and I think that's when a lot of it's going to come alive. However, a couple days after that, on January 18th, we have Venus trining Mars. So as Venus is in your 10th house of your career, Mars is in your 2nd house, this may have a lot to do with like, hey, your career's starting to, gain some momentum. There's just a lot of value being brought there, and money's starting to come in. Assets are starting to get, be more effective, be more efficient. Things are really starting to come up in a really good way. I do think Venus trining Mars is going to be good for money, good for income, good for, if you want to buy something, if you want to do something with your company, or if you have a business, good thing to expand there as well. I just think it's going to be positive and forward-moving energy in this area. But besides that, I kind of, that's one thing. But 2 days later, we have the big day of January, and that's January 20th. We have the Sun going into Aquarius, we have the full moon in Leo, which is a total lunar eclipse, and it's the last eclipse that we have in Leo. And we also have Mars squaring Saturn. And so as the sun goes into Aquarius, as it enters your 12th house, where it's kind of an interesting place for the sun to transit, because, you know, the 12th house is about secrets, and the 12th house is hidden things, and, you know, the subconscious and repressed and unacknowledged parts. And as the sun goes in there, the sun is lighting up this area. The sun is showing you what you don't always see, what does get repressed and not acknowledged. And this is in Aquarius, where we're talking about connections. We're talking about really, you know, establishing, you know, a sense of connection, not just like, you know, a non-verbal connection, but establishing like, hey, what works, where can I connect this piece to another piece, how can I look at things through a different perspective to get a better perspective on things, taking a step back to see things in a bigger picture, so you can get a better perspective, a better understanding. And I think as the sun goes into the 12th house, where, I mean, we've had these eclipses here, you've had this Mars retrograde here, this is just going to be an illuminating time for you to bring up things that sometimes you repress or you don't acknowledge. You know, this is going to be a very weird time, but as we have this full moon in Leo in this eclipse, this moon in Leo is in your 6th house, where this is talking, like, this is really focused on the 6th house is your work, your routine, your health, your habits, your sense of service, your employment. And as we have the moon becoming full in Leo, where it's wanting to feel proud, it's wanting to feel love, it's wanting to feel integrous, it's wanting to feel validated and powerful and loving and caring. And this is happening in your 6th house, where we're talking about your efficiency, what you're doing every day. And I think as the sun goes into Aquarius and goes into your 12th house, this is just going to be illuminating a big part of you from, like, you know, taking back what we went through with the eclipses in Leo and Aquarius of like, hey, what do you need to realize about yourself in order to bring that Leo energy into your life every single day? Where do you need to apply the self-love? Where do you need to bring more love and bring the, you know, what's going to be good for you and your soul and your heart? Where can you bring that into play every single day? And what do you have to acknowledge about yourself? What do you have to stop repressing in order to fit that into your habits and into your routine? And I think this full moon Leo is going to be very powerful for you guys to really go like, okay, you know, after all of the stuff that you guys went through, this full moon in Leo is kind of like, hey, you have the courage, you have the energy, and you have the capability to do this every day, to feel powerful, to, you know, put your 110% self out there and get the best results that you're, you know, looking for. It's just about not repressing, you know, how to really connect things and taking a bigger, you know, taking a step back from things for a second, not being so involved in the mixture. Then also on January 20th, Mars is going to square Saturn, where, you know, Mars is in your 2nd house and Saturn's in your 11th. Like, Mars squaring Saturn is kind of a power struggle. It is an issue, and Saturn's in your 11th house, where you have these responsibilities and these commitments to these people that you know and these networks. And Mars is in your 2nd house, where money is kind of like, you know, like it's coming in, but it's going out too. It can be really easy to spend this money. And as Mars squares Saturn, it's kind of like, where is your investment? Where are you really investing with your friends, and how is that affecting you? Do you have the resources for that? Like, you can't pour water into everyone's cup if you have no water in your own cup. Like, you have to make sure you're good. So I think this is just going to be a big time of reevaluating, like, okay, where do you have to, you know, structure yourself and limit yourself and concentrate your energy with the groups of people that you involve yourself with, along with the money that you spend, the money that you have, the things that you have, what you actually have to give or to put out and do with. So I think Mars squaring Saturn is going to be a big deal, but it's kind of like, hey, you know, this Sun in Aquarius full moon thing is kind of like, you, even though like this is going to make you have to come down to a decision, it's basically, it's not about, you know, oh, both sides are bad, either way it sucks. It's more of like this full moon in Leo is like, hey, you got to realize that you have this great energy that you have bestowed to you, and you have to have confidence to be able to tackle these problems every single day. And with the Saturn-Mars square, where these problems are going to be very prevalent, that moon in Leo is kind of like, but you have the courage, like you have the opportunity, you have the faith, like you just got to believe, even though it sounds so corny, but you just got to believe in yourself in order to really accomplish it, tackle it. So that's the big deal of January. The last few days of January, though, the next day I should say, on January 21st, we have Venus conjoining Jupiter in your 10th house. This is expansion. This is a lot of value being brought in your career. Maybe something good happens with your boss. Maybe you have an opportunity to learn and advance in your career. But either way, Venus hitting Jupiter in your 10th house is like really positive for the career aspect, really positive for the public eye. Like this is going to be really good for that area of your life. So I would definitely bank on something good happening there. However, on the same day, Mercury conjoins the South Node, where you're having these issues with, your professional networks, your professional connections, your friends, your community. What we were talking about when I was saying how the sun is going to hit the South Node, it's time to look back in the past, it's time to reevaluate that and just look. Mercury hitting the South Node is like, I've been making this analogy in a couple videos, but it's like if you guys watch football, the football coaches a lot of the times will look at videos of past games and looked at what worked, what didn't work, and where the issues were, so they can look at that and learn from their mistakes and move forward. And as Mercury hits the South Node, I really think this is going to be a time of like actually looking back at your past and writing things down, like what did work, what didn't work, and how can you delegate that, and how can you utilize that information in whatever situation you have going on right now. And so I think Mercury hitting the South Node is definitely looking in the past to understand how to move forward. And especially with Venus and Jupiter conjoining in your 10th house, I do think this is going to be positive stuff. It's positive forward movement, like really good, but it could be a lot. So it's kind of like you still have stuff to tackle. So in order to finish the stuff that you've got to tackle and that you've got to be responsible for, like look back in the past, figure it out, get it handled so you can enjoy that Venus-Jupiter stuff. And then after that, January 23rd, Mercury goes into Aquarius, into your 12th house, where it's all about uncovering those repressed parts of yourself. January 25th, Mars trines Jupiter, where Mars is kind of like, putting in the right energy, putting in the right resources, and bringing in the right resources from you in order to expand in your career, in order to bring more fruition to your job or your workplace and stuff like that. So that's still super positive. And then the last thing in January is Mercury conjoins the Sun and goes Cazimi at 8 degrees Aquarius on January 29th. And this is happening in your 12th house, and this is pretty much on right next to the degree that Mars retrograded on. And I do think that this is going to be a big time of, this is the 12th house. This is the subconscious. This is repressed and unacknowledged parts of yourself. This is the house between worlds. And Mercury is all about understanding and communication. And as he hits the Sun, where he's just downloading information, and this is in Aquarius, where this is about connecting things and seeing different perspectives and being creative and unique and getting all of the little tiny mechanisms moving at the right pace to create a bigger picture. As Mercury hits the Sun in this 12th house area, I think this is going to bring up a lot more of like, okay, now that I'm not repressing this stuff, I'm acknowledging this stuff. This is really the acknowledgement and the awareness of what you repress that you can kind of utilize in your day-to-day stuff that's going to bring things together. That kind of sounded confusing, but we're going to talk about it more in February. But I just want to bring up the fact that this is your 12th house. This is a weird area. And you have the Sun and Mercury, where we're talking about a lot of clarity in a very misunderstood part of your chart. So a lot of things are going to be coming up in places that you didn't expect and things that you didn't know. And it is going to be a little bit weird. But that's how you're kind of ending off January, is with those realizations. So with that being said, that's what I got for you guys. I think this month is going to be really good for a couple of areas, but I also do think it's going to be a lot of hard work and a lot of responsibility and commitment in other areas. But you guys got it. Mars isn't in your first house anymore. Venus isn't retrograding in your 9th. You're going to be fine. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching and liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing. And I'll be seeing you guys next month.